Jenny was riding home in a crowded subway car. She was so sick of it all. Every day the same thing. Waking up in the dark. Cramming breakfast into her son. Always afraid of being late everywhere. Take him to daycare. And then the usual morning crush in the subway. At work, endless reports and nagging bosses. In the break, a modest lunch taken from home. After lunch, drowsiness because of the eternal lack of sleep. But you need to work, and even coffee does not save. How her life has changed since the death of her husband. From a small, but so cozy, and hometown, the woman had to move to the noisy center. She needed money. Because she had a son and a sick mother-in-law on her hands. Her mother-in-law, a young woman full of vigor and energy, was shaken by the death of her only son. 2 weeks after the funeral, she suffered a stroke. A month in the hospital and discharge home. Her mother-in-law could no longer walk, so Jenny had to move her into her own apartment and care for her. Jenny loved her mother-in-law very much, and their relationship was surprisingly warm and cordial. The thought of leaving her husband's mother did not even cross her mind. However, care for lying took a lot of effort and time. And also that specific smell, which always appears where there is a paralyzed person. It quickly permeated everything in the house. The son was only 1 year old at the time. The young woman had to urgently leave her maternity leave and return to her previous place of work. The boss took pity on Jenny and often let her go home early. Except that such work was paid accordingly. There was enough only for groceries and utility bills. Jenny rented her mother-in-law's apartment, but all that money was spent on medicine and a nurse. She persuaded a lonely neighbor to take care of her mother-in-law and Dirk while Jenny was at work. The neighbor was cheap, but there was hardly any money left. One day Dirk fell ill. The baby was taken to the hospital. And Jenny realized that she had no money left at all. No medicine to buy. No doctors to thank. No nurses to put in her pocket. It was clear that this could not continue, and she began to look for another job. Then she got a call from Helen, whom she'd been at school with. Jenny, why do you keep worrying in your province? There's a way out of every situation. Listen, I'm getting married and moving away with my husband. I want to offer you my position. I remember you're a smart girl and, above all, decent. Helen, stop. What position? I can't move to your town. My mother-in-law is sick. And where will I live? You have to pay half a salary for an apartment there. What's the point? Listen, your salary will be good. And Helen named the sum, 3 times more than the one Jenny received. And you'll live at my place. I don't want to rent my apartment to strangers. I've recently done some renovations. Well, not for free, of course, but for half the real price I'll rent it to you. Agree, my friend. You can't refuse such offers. She laughed happily. What about the mother-in-law? Jenny whispered. She wanted to go to the big city, to get a good salary and to breathe freely. You're not going to bring your mother-in-law with you, are you? You'll be at work all day. Keep in mind, we pay okay, but you have to work really hard. You'll hire a 24-hour nurse, and you'll go on weekends if you want. It's only 300 kilometers away. And Jenny agreed. She only now realized how tired she was and how much she wanted a normal life. And a holiday. The mother-in-law let her daughter-in-law go and even blessed her. Jenny's parents were long gone, and there was no one else to bless her. In the city, everything quickly got better. There was enough money. Her son went to a private kindergarten with attentive teachers. Jenny could afford to buy good food, quality clothes, and even sometimes went to the salon for a manicure. She spent almost all her weekends in her hometown with her mother-in-law. Helen sold her apartment and Jenny rented another one for full price. She never really settled in this huge city. There were no friends, only work buddies. There was no time, energy, or desire for a personal life. Men sometimes paid attention to a pretty young woman, but they all seemed not serious to Jenny. She still remembered her husband who had left so early, although even her mother-in-law urged her to start a new life. The husband was away on a business trip at the time. Jenny had forgotten that their relationship was strained. Her husband was burdened with a small child and didn't help Jenny at all. He could skip with friends all weekend. To all the reproaches of his wife, Alexander replied that he was still young and not Onguluvalu. When they got married, they were just over 20 and they planned to have children much later. They married for a great love, which began in high school. Jenny had graduated from university. Alexander was already working. He wooed the girl beautifully and soon the young people were married. It was a spectacular couple. A tall athletic blonde and a small fragile brunette with huge brown eyes. In the memory of Jenny remained only this happy time. And then she became unexpectedly pregnant, and scandals began at home. Her husband said that the child was not necessary now. It was too early for them to have children. But Jenny did not want to hear about it. In due time a healthy baby was born. Alexander seemed to be happy, but something was obviously missing. He all began to go on frequent business trips, and on weekends went to friends. We dreamed of buying a car, and travel, and now all the money on the little one goes, he said to his wife. In one of the trips and he died. How much later Jenny regretted that she did not make peace with her husband before his departure, did not say how much she loved him. On the weekend she and her son went to her grandmother's house as usual. Her mother-in-law was feeling much better, but she had not started walking. The woman was able to get around in a wheelchair and take care of herself. They refused a caregiver. Her mother-in-law cooked and welcomed Jenny and her grandson with rich borscht, cutlets and fragrant pies. After a hearty lunch, the mother-in-law said, "The letter carrier came yesterday and brought a notice in your name. Some valuable parcel came. Go and get it." Jenny wondered what it could be. She had never received any parcels or letters. At the post office she was given a thick cardboard envelope. The name of the sender told her nothing. Jenny impatiently tore open the package. Inside was another envelope of the same size, only paper. There was only one large inscription on it, "Jenny from Alexander." Her hands trembled. Her breath caught. What a stupid, cruel joke. Alexander. That was her late husband's name. Jenny tore open the second envelope crookedly with her naughty fingers. A bunch of keys fell out of it, and there were some documents in a thin transparent folder. The young woman took a quick look through them. A certificate of ownership in her name. The house at the address Krasnodar City. Street. The lines blurred before her eyes. She did not understand anything. The woman went outside and took a deep breath. She felt slightly dizzy. What did this all mean? Needing to calm down and think, her first thought was, is Alexander really alive? But how could that be possible? They were officially informed about his death. Then the mother-in-law went to Krasnodar. The coffin was closed. Well, let's say he was alive. But where had he been all these 5 years? My thoughts were confused. He's not alive. Then what was that letter? What was that house? She remembered that a friend of his lived in Krasnodar. Had he decided to help the family of his dead friend? Yes, I suppose so. That's probably Artem Maximov. But it's still strange. Of course. Why not just call? What should we do? Should I go there or not? She was sitting on a bench near the post office. She couldn't go home like that. Her mother-in-law would notice. And she mustn't worry. I'll tell her that some work documents had come, Jenny decided. On Monday she went to the notary and showed him the papers for the house. The notary assured Jenny that the documents were authentic and the house really belonged to her. Then she decided that she would fly to Krasnodar. She left her son with her mother-in-law. In the southern city spring has already come. Jenny enjoyed breathing in the warm fresh air. She took a cab from the airport. She couldn't wait to unravel the secret of the mysterious letter. The journey took about 40 minutes. The closer they got, the more nervous she became. The house stood on a quiet street surrounded by similarly new cottages. Nice neighborhood, the cabbie said respectfully. Jenny got out of the car. A low fence of large stone, a wrought iron gate. The yard seemed empty. Jenny rang the bell, waited about 5 minutes. But no one came out. The neighboring houses seemed quiet and empty, too, except that a dog barked somewhere in the distance. I have to open the gate myself. Jenny felt like an imposter here. She felt as if the owner would show up and chase her away. The deed to the house was in her backpack. The keys were there. She had to make up her mind, or why had she come here? Jenny opened the gate and entered the garden. How beautiful it was here. A path of paving stones ran between neatly trimmed bushes and small thuja trees. Large bushes of white and dark purple lilacs gave off a deafening odor. And what a lovely arbor and fountain. Jenny even forgot about her fears. It was so beautiful and cozy here. Before going inside, she decided to sit in the gazebo for a while. Suddenly she heard the noise of a motor, and then the gate creaked slightly. Jenny shuddered. A tall man in a dark suit with a bouquet of flowers in his hands was walking towards the gazebo. He came closer. This can't be Alexander. This is Alexander, her husband. Well, hello wife, he said, walking into the gazebo. Just don't faint, it's really me. Jenny wanted to get up from the bench, but could not. Her legs did not hold her. She couldn't even speak, but only stared at her husband. He's just as handsome, but he's put on weight, but it suits him. And how perfectly his suit fit him. Expensive, probably. What a stupid thought. Jenny warned herself. She jumped up and threw herself on her husband's neck. He picked her up in his arms and held her tightly against him. The woman could not breathe in such a native and favorite smell. Alexander, you are alive, she whispered. Where were you? What happened to you? She immediately thought that her husband had not willingly disappeared for these 5 years. Alexander gloomed slightly. Jenny, sit down and listen to me. Just promise me you'll listen to the end. It's not a very pleasant story, but I don't want to start a new phase of our life with deception. He told me that it wasn't him who died in that car accident, but his full namesake Alexander. Not such a rare combination of first and last name. Alexander himself at that moment just went on a bender. He had been vacationing for 2 days with some new acquaintances. And then he woke up on a park bench without his phone money and documents. He found his buddy. He was shocked at first, and then told him that everyone thought he was dead. Alexander was indignant at first. But then he thought for a while and an idea popped into his brain. Not to resurrect. Alexander put his arm around Jenny's shoulders and continued. I realize how wild it looks, but it seemed like a brilliant idea to me at the time. At least a couple of months to live without the constant control of a disgruntled wife. Without the eternal moralizing of my mother. Without obligations. I'll be free for a month or 2 and then I'll come back. Jenny was in a daze. She did not know what to say. And Alexander went on. Well, 2 months passed. Then 3. And you know, I got into it. I started playing. I was winning a lot. Anyway, I changed my mind about coming back to life. I thought I'd make enough money for you and me to pay for everything. Do you have any idea what we went through with your mom? You know that 2 weeks after your so-called demise, your mom became an invalid. She still can't walk, and I'm living in a rented apartment in another city to make more money. Do you remember about your son? Jenny, I'm asking you to calm down. Have some water or wine. I'll get you some. You promised you'd listen. I didn't find out about Mom until 6 months ago, when I started following your life. Anyway, listen to this. Alexander told me that he met a woman about 20 years older than him. Beautiful, rich and confident, the mistress of life. Alexander lost his head. They lived together for 2 years. She made him documents in the name of Max, got him a job in her construction firm. With Ludmilla they parted, but remained partners. But how can he face his family after what he'd done? So he came up with this plan for the house. He put it in Jenny's name, sent the deed to the keys. He was sure she'd come and sort things out. They'd talk it over and figure out what to do next. What's the next step? Alexander, I'm sorry, Max. I don't remember your name. There's nothing to discuss. Everyone will live his own life from now on. You didn't need us before, and now we don't need you, Jenny said calmly. I beg you to forgive me. Alexander knelt down in front of her, looking pitifully into her eyes. I need you. I really need you. I have money. Remember how we dreamed of a house of our own, and Mom would be happy here. And Dirk. You cannot work. We'll go on a trip. Alexander, tears came to Jenny's eyes. I can never forgive you. You'll never understand what I've endured these past 5 years. How I barely made ends meet. I've never had a man. Never needed anyone. And you betrayed those closest to you. If you have any conscience, tell your mother-in-law yourself. You're a stranger to me and Dirk. I don't want a house, money, or travel from a stranger. I'm not a stranger. I'm your husband. He started to get angry. My husband is buried in the city cemetery, and I don't want to know you. Jenny ran out of the gazebo. Get out of here. Alexander rushed after her. Stay back, or I'll shout all over the street. The man stopped. Jenny ran down the road. She came to her senses only in some public garden. She didn't know how long she had been sitting there. Her resentment toward Alexander had subsided a little, giving way to a kind of longing. Had she done the right thing, deciding for both his mother and Dirk? After all, he's family. But how do you forget? You can't. It can't be forgiven. Jenny cried quietly. She remembered how they had met. She remembered his blue eyes and the dimple on his chin. But immediately the picture changed and she imagined her husband with another woman. And she at the same time took care of a sick mother-in-law, brought up a small son and counted every ruble. How could he spoil everything so badly? She will not forgive him.